going to talk about soon enough, and this is with regards to a theme coming in from India itself. Internet-led lead research at JM Financial Institutional Securities. Sachin Dixit joins us now on his latest report on ONDC. What basically ONDC is like a UPI movement for all the e-commerce players. Currently, what you have is a large number of sellers and buyers on specific platforms. What the ONDC will do is move away from the platform-led network and go to a network-based application, which a lot of people will use, democratize e-commerce, so to say. The question is whether it is a disruptor or whether it is evolution going forward. Sachin,
so one sec, just for the benefit of our viewer, right? So an ONDC is basically if I'm a consumer and I want to either book a cab or book a meal or book a gift for someone, I don't have to do it on separate apps. I can just do it on one common platform. Is that the right way to look at it?
No, that's not the right way to perhaps the right way to look at it is that, say for instance, you are a seller and you have a listing on Amazon, Flipkart or any of these platforms. Then what happens is that when every time you make that sale, you sell it only on Amazon or you sell it only on Flipkart, etc. ONDC will make it like a network where you upload your details on that network and Amazon, Flipkart and all these other players will just upload all that data from that network and put it on their platforms. So what happens
So your product is accessible across
all platforms.
So you have more sellability of
You have more sellability. You don't have to give the commissions to all those platforms, and you have access to the data as well. Who's buying it? What kind of people? Currently, all this data is by these platforms as well. I mean, think of it as UPI.
It's like an aggregator at the highest level. It's a marketplace for marketplaces. I think that's the way to.
I mean, it's a network. I mean, let's
ask
Sachin. Sachin, can you explain it to us like we're five?
Sure. Yeah, so Mangalam, basically overall, I think on ONDC, the view largely remains that it's not a wallet, it's not a app like say UPI was not. Similarly, ONDC is not a platform. This is more like a digital protocol. These are digital rails, which are basically enabling interoperability across platforms. So no matter where the buyer is, no matter where the seller is, as long as everyone is onboarded on ONDC, they have access to each other. So that's how the transaction can evolve going forward. Overall, it's basically a well-intentioned initiative by the government in order to democratize e-commerce, just like UPI democratized digital payments. And there's valid reason to it too, right? If you look at overall retail industry in India, and see almost 70% coming from food and grocery in the overall retail. While if you do look at the like-to-like in terms of the online or e-commerce platforms, almost 80% comes just from electronics and apparel. While we do understand these are large ticket items which people might be buying online, but there is obviously a sizable portion of our population that has been left out of the e-commerce revolution. So effectively what ONDC is doing ONDC is giving all of these players who were initially left out a chance to become a part of the e-commerce journey that India is going through. Today sitting at almost like 5 to 7% sort of digital penetration in retail. This number can easily go up towards like almost 20% over the next 5 to 7 years, depending on how ONDC evolves and how successful the initiative is.
So Sachin, let's break this down in terms of what this means for companies probably under your coverage. When ONDC is launched, what would it mean for a Nykaa?
So roughly, I think it will vary for company by company. I think what actually ends up happening is there are obviously these walled gardens that companies have created. Whether it's Nykaa, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Flipkart, I think it's true for everyone. Within these walled gardens, there is some sort of a specialized retail that is happening, and then there's a generic retail that is happening. Interestingly, for a platform like Nykaa, it's a very specialized retail platform. It's driven by content. It's driven by more than just a transaction platform, right? If you look at even the user behavior on Nykaa, people don't go to Nykaa just to do a single transaction. People are spending time on Nykaa platforms, even outside the transaction journey that they are doing. So effectively, I believe for a specialized retail sort of a platform like Nykaa, while a bunch of the users might still prefer sticking to the walled garden sort of an ecosystem, compared to ONDC, wherein everything is being shown on the platform on which the consumer might be. But in the best case scenario, let's assume, say, where Nykaa becomes a part of ONDC, right? how does it evolve going forward for Nykaa? Effectively, there is a larger customer base that Nykaa has access to, right? Today, Nykaa has something like a 8 to 9 million odd beauty transacting shoppers on the platform, and overall digital shoppers in India are roughly say 180, 200 odd million, depending on whose estimates you are looking at. So effectively, there is a large digital shopper base that is not on Nykaa today. We can obviously factor that out maybe by gender, by the income criteria, etc. But still, there's a large digital shopper base which Nykaa has the potential to onboard, which it does not. In case Nykaa becomes a participant on ONDC, Nykaa now has access to all these digital shoppers. So effectively, they do not need to spend money on acquiring these customers to their own platform. So in that sense, ONDC also becomes a highly capital efficient model. Like not every platform needs to acquire all the buyers. Not every platform needs to acquire all the sellers. People can cross leverage each other's strengths.
I understand that ONDC is still in a nascent stage, right? There's a pilot program only across about 50 cities or so. How long do you think it could take for a complete rollout?
I think it's going to take time because effectively there is a lot of operational complexity involved when you talk of ONDC. Say, unlike UPI, where there was only one SKU, which was cash, that was being used, there was no quality issues, there were no return problems. So that is, ONDC is likely to be much more complicated. So how I think, and it's basis media reports only, largely what we are hearing is that 2 cities will go live probably by end of September. And after that, the government has plans for rapid expansion. But it's going to be a function of how well the adoption happens, how well the platform comes out prepared for all the operational problems it's likely to face. So that rollout, I think, will depend on how prepared the platform is when it comes up. And it might be more gradual than rapid.
And that is exactly my final question to you, Sachin. You know that there are a lot of ifs and buts here. If it does not generate the kind of traction everyone is expecting it to generate, then maybe everyone will go back to the current dominant players. So the idea of democratizing e-commerce will perhaps, not be as successful at execution level as it is at the thought process level. The second part is that, even though we will have smaller players joining the ONDC, chances are that they might get marginalized. And where does the buck stop as a customer if I buy it off someone who's on the ONDC platform but buys it off, say, something like an Amazon, a substandard product who is answerable? So those are a couple of problems, right?
So they are certainly going to be issues. I think recently itself there has been talk of a third party becoming the online dispute resolution mechanism for ONDC. So those sort of checks and balances are being put into place. But in terms of the marginalization of a local retailer or a local entrepreneur, I think there is more that might be needed. In the current shape of ONDC that we understand, effectively, if everyone comes on board, let's say I'm a shopper and I go to a ONDC buyer side app, and I see listings from a major brand. Let's say I need to buy a washing machine. I see the brand itself being listed. I also see Amazon, Flipkart being listed, and I also see a local retailer being listed. Most likely I'll go with the first 3 options rather than with the 4th option, right? So empowering that local retailer, I think a lot more needs to happen. Obviously, it's much simpler to do in food and grocery categories, where the larger brands or the larger platforms might not be as dominant. But even there, I think there will be things that need to be solved for.
Okay, all right, Sachin. Well, this deserves a much longer conversation, but we've completely run out of time. Thanks very much for joining in and
shamelessly
speaking
plug
with us.
the Mad About Markets episode.